Hi, happy Monday. Monday's a good day for me because I'm energized. I rest a little bit on Sunday knowing that because of procrastination, a lot of my clients don't even contact me until Monday. They leave everything that they didn't do Friday to start on Monday, but that's okay. It's been that way for the past 14 years that I've been working on my own, and I don't think that's about to change unless people change. But what I am looking to talk today about is my fascination. I'm totally engrossed. I'm obsessed with fractal geometry. And why is that? Because it seems like geometry solves a lot of the problems that even quantum physics doesn't solve. It's one of those discoveries that actually the discovery of fractal geometry was done mainly by Benoit Mandelbrot back in the 70s, and it's considered as big as the discovery of gravity by Newton, because quantum physics can explain how things at a microscopic or atomic level works, and can describe a lot of what goes on in the universe, but it cannot describe our natural world. Why is a leaf the shape it is? Why is a tree the way a tree is? Euclidian geometry and Plato based nature on 5 basic shapes: triangle, rectangle, square, circle, tetrahedron, etc. I don't remember all 5 exactly, but the point is that when you look at nature, it is not a perfect triangle, circle, square, rectangle, tetrahedron. In fact, only things made by man follow those shapes. So the big mental leap here was Benoit Mandelbrot thinking to himself, a thought experiment just very similar to the thought experiments that Einstein had, and an epiphany similar to that of Einstein with the light and the theory of relativity, is that he wanted to describe the natural world. Benoit wanted to describe the natural world, and he was able to do so applying fractal geometry. And a fractal is something, the word fractal comes from Latin, and it means something that it is not smooth, that does not follow Euclidean geometry. So I'm here waiting for my puppy. He's taking his sweet time. So we have a world that no longer conforms to Euclidean geometry, although Plato did think that the world was based on Euclidean geometry, and that was incorrect. Plants are not smooth, trees are not smooth, clouds are not smooth, but they do have self-similarity in that, take for instance a piece of broccoli. You can cut off a piece of broccoli and within it is the same shape as the larger part, so it has what is called self-similarity. And Mandelbrot discovered an equation that can be used to generate clouds, to generate trees, to generate anything that's in nature. This is the reason why we have these wonderful uh, three-dimensional software packages that can emulate nature, such as Vue, Bryce. The Unity engine has something similar to Mojo World, where it uses fractal geometry to emulate nature. So we now find that nature can be replicated, the forms in nature can be replicated rather, by using these formulas in fractal geometry. And it's basically to make it simple for those fellow programmers, friends of mine. It's a formula that iterates, and there's a variable that keeps adding every time the loop comes in. It's not a fractal loop. It's an iteration. It's an iteration. Every time it loops, it adds a new value, and that creates something like the Mandelbrot, which is a beautiful. To me, it has this symmetry and this beauty, and you could zoom into it 100 times, and 100 times you will find the same structure, the same architecture that you could find at zooming out at the highest level. That to me is wonderful, guys. So we have this new math, this new geometry that it is called fractal geometry, that is able to describe how the forms, again I'm talking about the shapes, let's use the word shapes, the shapes in nature are derived from, be it a tree, the clouds. I can actually use a mathematical formula that will replicate, it's a little point, a little pixel, and it just loops into this iterating fractal equation until it creates this structure, be it a cloud or a tree. And how wonderful is it that we can create that we can devise a mathematical formula that loops, that will eventually look exactly like a tree or look exactly like plants. That to me is amazing. Now here is the part that has me fascinated, that has me dreaming. I dream fractal geometry, guys. I'm not kidding you. I've been getting these synchronicities, and when I start hitting these synchronicities, I know that I'm onto something important, and that something out there is telling me this is important. And here's the wonderful thing about fractal geometry. Well, if you remember, Einstein spent the latter years of his life trying to figure out the unified field theory. So what is the unified field theory? The unified field theory is basically trying to achieve a very simple mathematical equation that can describe the entire universe. And the problem is, we have Newtonian physics that describes the normal world. We have quantum physics that describes the atomic world, things at that level. But we have not until we still have not come up with a complete unified field theory, which is the reconciliations of the weak and strong gravity force, electromagnetism. We have not yet come, and we need a theory that reconciles all of these forces, and we don't have it yet. Now here's the beautiful thing. Einstein tried, he died trying to find this. He did discover some other very interesting laws and artifacts, so to speak. Artifact being something, a strange result that was not expected, is what I would call an artifact. Well, Einstein found this something called the Einstein-Rosen effect, and he used to call it a strange effect at a distance. And there's a certain way, and I don't know the math, it's way over my head, but there's a certain way that if you turn on a proton in one atom, it's called quantum entanglement, by the way. It's quantum entanglement. If you turn on a proton on one atom, and if that atom is entangled with another atom that could be across the universe, this is the only case in which that atom across the universe will turn positive or negative depending on what you're doing to the atom on this side of the universe. And it beats the speed of light. It is instantaneous. There is no delay. And it is the only thing that beats the speed of light. The problem is, Einstein saw that as so strange, he didn't even believe the results of his equations and experiments, to the point where that's when he came up with he dismissed the whole idea. He thought he had made a mistake, and he said, God does not play dice with the universe. And what he meant is, this is too strange and too woo-woo that to be a scientific possibility. Fast forward, wow, close to 100 years later, and we are now finding out we had string theory that got closer to unified field theory. We had M theory, and again, I'm getting to this. How does fractal geometry relate to this? Well, guess what, guys? The newest and latest new attempt at the unified field theory that is the closest, and when somebody says that they have a successful theory in physics, what that means is that using that theories when you set up a math equation using that theory, you can describe successfully things out there in the universe. And unfortunately, string theory was not successful. String theory did not come up with a successful way to describe anything. The math would end up in infinities, and it was just a very expensive experiment. But we had a guy in Hawaii called Gary Lisi, a physicist, not a guy, I should say, a physicist that, using geometry, figured out that the universe is actually geometric, and he came up with an equation and a theory that uses geometry to describe the universe, and his theory actually has positive proof. In other words, he can use his theory, apply the math to describe the orbit of a planet or to describe the birth of the universe, and that's what they've been looking for. So he's the closest guy. Gary Lisi is the closest physicist that has the physicist who has come closest to a true unified field theory, which is the theory of everything. Is the simple math equation. So what is it? Well, it turns out that he created this eight-dimensional geometric figure. and it's basically like a sequence of circles densely packed. Like, you know, if you look at it, you go to a fruit store and you see this little mountain of oranges and they're stacked like in a pyramid. Well, that's actually a geometric pattern that when you plot a point, a dot in the middle of each orange, take away the orange, those dots represent a crystalline structure that actually can be used to predict a lot of stuff in the universe, and something that can be used to even go back to the Big Bang and before that. He got together with, I think it's Clee Irwin is the other physicist's name, and they've decided to call this the E8 structure. Okay, and how does this work? Well, the EA structure is a structure in 8 dimensions, and those 8 dimensions go, we can't see the 8 dimensions obviously, but those 8 dimensions can be seen, or the shadow of it, the reflection of an 8-dimension geometric structure can be seen by folding it or reflecting the 8th dimension in 4 dimensions and taking that 4-dimensional structure and moving it down to 3 dimensions. And the way you can think of it is, think of a cube. Think of a wire diagram of a cube. Let's say you have a cube that you made with wires, right? So you have a box. Okay, even easier. Think of a box, and you cut out all the sides of the box just to have the edges of the box, right? The box is 3-dimensional. Now, if you were to call that box a crystal, and the sun hits the box, and you project the shadow of the box to the ground, you can... Oh, hold on a second. There's a truck coming, but... Okay, let's wait for a second, because I don't want to stop this video. Okay, so this is how we're able to see 8 dimensions in a 3-dimensional brain that we have, that we're not yet able to see 4 dimensions or 5 dimensions even. You have a box, cut out the sides of the box all the way to the edge so that you have like a wireframe. The sun hits the wireframe and you move it, and on the floor you will see a shadow of the box. But because we're so clever, we actually can determine a lot. We can learn a lot about the shadow because we know that that is a projection of a 3-dimensional object in 2D, right? So in the same manner, we can project an 8-dimensional geometric structure into 4 dimensions, the 4 dimensions into 3 dimensions, and at 3 dimensions we know what we're looking at because we know mathematically there's 8 dimensions in it. But as we move those 4 dimensions and look at the shadow, the reflection, the 3-dimensional reflection, we can use that and add the math to add the 8th dimension, and it describes all sorts of things. All of a sudden we have a theory of the universe, a theory of creation that does solve a lot of problems mathematically that the string theory did not. So the shadow that you see is called a quasi-crystal. Quasi mean almost, right? So it's a quasi-crystal because it's only a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional crystal, right? And we talked about how this new E8, that's what it's called, E8, look it up, E8 crystal, we can only observe and do calculations on its shadow or its reflection in a lesser dimension, in the dimension that we can observe and test. So guys, my mind has been blown with this revelation that we're finally able to get to the point. Sorry, picking up my older puppy. He's 12 and he's already walked enough. We finally have been able to get beyond Einstein, even beyond the most advanced of string theory ideas, to something that is, in effect, getting much closer to that simple, elegant, small equation that from that equation you could derive the entire universe. So there you have it. And let's see, how long did that take me? Basically, in 13 minutes, I have tried to explain to you what has been my fascination. I mean, something's telling me, and it's that serendipity feeling, and it's that all these synchronicity events that are converging. Something's telling me that I'm on the right track, that if I look under enough rocks I might find some deeper meaning or some yet undiscovered way of putting all this together. So when we talk geometry, and you know how the ancients, most ancient cultures describe sacred geometry and actually have drawn sacred geometry when they describe the universe and the gods and all this. And now, to me, it makes perfect sense. So I wonder what they knew that we didn't know. And actually, I think when you look at the Mayans, the Incas, the Aztecs, the Egyptian cultures, you know that they had to have a level of knowledge and wisdom, and that knowledge and wisdom was abruptly lost somehow. I mean, how many of us actually create pyramids and temples and giant structures? We don't do that anymore. We do it for entertainment, but look at the equipment required, the manpower equipment required to do it. Could only be done now in the 21st century. How did they do it back then? My wife and I actually went to Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman and saw some of the ancient ruins there. And the first thought that comes into your mind when you're facing this 20-ton boulder that's about 20 feet tall is, why would an agrarian culture, an agrarian race of people who had very basic tools, why and how on earth were they able to not only move the stones but carve them and place them in a way that they all fit perfectly to build these? Especially you go to Sacsayhuaman and it's amazing. these structures that are seem to be cut by laser. So I think a lot of the secret to the origin of the universe might have to do with a multidimensional geometry, multidimensional frequencies, vibration, and this is going to blow your mind, but please bear with me. I want to postulate something to you, and I hope you don't take it out of context, because I mean it in the most respectful and honored way of putting it. Perhaps, and this is something that I've thought about even in the 80s when I was in my 20s. I had this thought that the only possible way that this universe makes sense, with all the things that exist in humanity, all the technology, the way the universe is laid out, and it seems to be intelligent design. There's no doubt in my mind, when you look at what is a human being? A human being is a collection of billions of single-celled organisms that have organized into a human body. And humans are 7 billion organisms that are organized and assembling into cities, into technology, into a spacefaring race. Similarly, excuse me, and I get tongue-tied. Come here, Alfie. Oh, the sprinklers went off and kind of bugged him. Similarly, excuse me, my tongue-tied. Oh, look at this guy. Sorry guys, my OCD and my ADD came in, but look at that beautiful guy. Is he not something else? Look at him. What a beauty. What a beauty. Oh, he's letting me get close. I'm going to stay about here. I feel that is such an honor when nature allows you a glimpse and says, it's okay, you can look at me, because he knows he's majestic. He knows that he's one of a kind, that he is the remnants of a prehistoric race that no longer reigns on this planet. They had their chance, they took it, and they're gone. And sad to say, I believe we shall do the same. We will have our chance, we take it, and if we do not survive this technological puberty that we're living in, we will go away too. It is up to us to be able to evolve to a type 1 civilization that will be able to control total mastery of energy via the sun. We'll put a Dyson sphere around it and harness the energy of the sun. We could also control the emissions of the sun this way. Once we put that Dyson sphere around it, we'll be able to cool down the rest of the solar system, so to speak. And actually, maybe it can work as a thermostat to allow us. I have to walk away from the sprinklers because my boy obviously does not like to walk. Oh, I'm gonna get wet. But maybe we could actually create a kind of a thermostat around the sun and control it and make wonderful weather on Earth once more.